This brief and very selective history of cancer explores how mankind came to understand the basic science behind cancer. Cancer certainly wasn't discovered or understood overnight. We will also review the development of various cancer treatments from ancient Persia to our 21st century. This could all be framed as a review of our historical ignorance, but we clearly have no right to be cocky today. There is obviously so much more yet to be understood. This history is wonderfully chronicled in the Pulitzer Prize winning book, The Emperor of All Maladies, a Biography of Cancer, as written by Siddhartha Mukherjee. Siddhartha is an oncologist who documents a comprehensive yet very readable book for the layman. After the Great Fire of London, strict rules were introduced concerning chimneys and keeping them clean from combustible soot. The job of chimney sweeper fell to small boys who could fit inside chimneys. Sweeping while naked became a common practice in London. Why dirty your clothes unnecessarily? But it was easy for doctors to notice that these boys were developing cancer of the scrotums that other boys their age would not develop. Doctors also noticed that Berlin chimney sweeps developed cancer of the scrotum at a far, far lower rate, and that German boys always wore underwear. Okay then. Cancer is caused by an external agent or carcinogen. Soot must be a carcinogen. Stay away from smoke and soot, and you won't develop cancer. This makes the 1950s debate over cigarettes and lung cancer puzzling today. Didn't doctors know about the link between smoke and soot and cancer? Yes, they did. But there was a problem. There were people who didn't smoke a day in their life who got lung cancer. So obviously, therefore, smoking can't be the reason for their cancer. There must be a different cause. Couldn't what we eat be a cause of cancer? The incidence of stomach cancer was dropping rapidly with the increased use of refrigeration. Or was it dropping due to our improved diet in the 20th century? In fact, the reduction of preservatives in our diet, notably nitrates in meats, provided us with fewer carcinogens, and we can thank refrigeration for that. So yes, indeed, something in what we were eating was acting as a carcinogen to give us cancer. Asbestos was known to be a carcinogen as early as 1913, but the U.S. did not regulate asbestos in the workplace until the 1970s. The reality is that by the 1970s, we knew asbestos could cause cancer, but we still didn't know how. So people were told to mask up and limit your exposure, and you will be okay. Does that sound familiar? In humans, the first confirmation that viruses could cause cancers were discovered in the 1960s after noticing this in animals earlier. What? How could a virus be a carcinogen? Good question. And in the 1970s, no one really knew how that could be. By the 1970s and to this day, 3 cancer treatment options had been developed, and they remain the 3 core available options to this day: surgery, chemotherapy, and radiation. There was evidence that they worked, sometimes, but did we know how? It wasn't until the 1980s that we finally understood that cancer is caused by mutations or changes with our DNA and genetic codes. Can carcinogens impact our DNA? Yes. Can viruses? Yes. There are multiple reasons why DNA can be damaged, but now we finally understood the essence of what is going on. Farmas and Bishop were awarded the Nobel Prize in 1989 for their research that proved the DNA-related cause of cancer. That doesn't feel very long ago to me. With this improved understanding, Herceptin was developed as a drug to target a specific type of breast cancer. It worked by targeting specific genes that doctors knew were mutated. As the first drug of this type, It became available in 1998. Today, many researchers are focused on identifying genetic material being impacted by tumors and then trying to find matching drugs that might work. It is a laborious process, but new drugs are being developed. Let's turn our focus to the advancement of the treatment options of surgery, chemotherapy, and radiation. The first record of a cancer surgery is in 474 BC, when the Queen of Persia had an illness which certainly resembled breast cancer. As queen of one of the greatest empires in human history, she would have had access to the best possible medical treatment available. The records indicate that she was desperate for a cure and had a eunuch cut off a breast. As you might have guessed, it didn't end well for her. It undoubtedly didn't go well for cancer patients for the next 2,400 years either. Here, drink this mercury. It will be good for you. I am sorry to invoke the images of untold suffering that patients must have experienced over the years. Doctors would undoubtedly have had good intentions, but if they didn't understand what they were dealing with, their cure was frequently worse than their disease. The 1800s started as an era of scientific ignorance that thankfully was starting to change. It was still the time when malaria was named for bad air, or malaire en français. Finally, surgery entered a new era with an understanding of infection and the need for sterilization. Joseph Lister is called the father of modern surgery because he was the first to advocate for sterilization during a surgery. He used carbonic acid to sterilize everything, including the patient, which certainly wasn't without its issues, but he ushered in a whole new era. The first modern mastectomies were performed by William Halsted at Roosevelt Hospital in New York. Dr. Halsted went on to be an influential founder of Johns Hopkins in Baltimore. Using modern anesthetic and sterilization techniques, he was the first to perform radical mastectomies, at least somewhat safer than those performed in ancient Persia. Breast cancer patients now had a chance to survive surgery, but they still tended to die. We know today that cancers can spread or metastasize elsewhere in the body. But the phrase, "we didn't get it all," started here. Doctors began to surgically remove larger and larger portions of the breast and shoulder regions in an effort to get it all. Over time, it was realized that the treatment was worse than the disease, and the extensive removal of tissue by surgery was curtailed. Surgery became more focused on the removal of smaller tumor lumps at an earlier stage, which in fact today remains statistically the most successful cancer treatment, in large measure because this treatment is done the earliest. X-rays were discovered in 1896. It did not take long for doctors to realize that X-rays could have an application for early cancer treatments. There were a lot of experimentations done as modern ethical constraints on treating patients were quite limited, and patients likely decided that they had little to lose. But X-rays, radiation, and radioactivity were all poorly understood. You certainly wouldn't get a prescription for radioactive, radium-laced drinking water today. Madame Curie is credited with the design of the first radiant emanation device. But for all her brilliance, she didn't know what she needed to do to protect herself. She died from radiation poisoning. Her directed radiation device was designed and implemented for wounded soldiers due to the high proportion of soldiers dying from infections. That must have been seen as a total Star Wars technology back then. Nonetheless, with the realization of the harmful effects of radiation, this new disinfectant technology did not last long. Today, multiple cancer treatments have adopted radiation technology in various ways. Beams of radiation are commonly used for breast and other cancers. Thyroid glands absorb iodine, so radioactive iodine is used for thyroid cancers. Brachytherapy uses the insertion of radioactive pellets into tumor areas, frequently for prostate cancer. Going back to the late 1800s, Germany was becoming the industrial powerhouse of the world and was overtaking Britain in many areas. One such area was their advanced chemical industry. Ironically, this was a result of Germany not having foreign colonies. In the textile and clothing sectors, Britain could source quality natural dyes from India. In order to compete with Britain and be independent in their ability to produce clothes, the German chemical industry was born out of a desire to manufacture synthetic dyes. The Germans consequently developed the world's best database of known synthetic chemicals. Dr. Paul Ehrlich was working near a chemical factory, and the thought dawned on him, could he find a chemical that could kill a microbe or bacteria without harming the patient? He called this the search for a silver bullet. Synthetic dyes were the most researched potential chemicals, the easiest to access for Dr. Ehrlich, and have chemical properties that made them potential silver bullets. The target for the bullet was soon expanded from bacteria to cancerous tumors. In the early 1900s, it was realized that sulfur-based mustard gas had potential to treat certain cancers due to their destruction of white blood cells. But World War I happened, and the German chemical industry became focused on producing mustard gas for the war and not for cancer patients. After the Great War, the use of mustard gas was banned by international conventions, and German chemists didn't return to focus on their cancer research. But a remarkable event in the Second World War had a profound impact on the future treatment of cancer. During the 1943 Allied invasion of Italy, the Germans realized that they had an opportunity to bomb the supply port of Bari. 28 ships were sunk or destroyed, including the SS John Harvey. Unknown to the public and officially not acknowledged by the U.S. military until 1967, by hitting John Harvey, the Germans had hit a large supply of mustard gas. Huge billows of smoke from the ship drifted into town, and hundreds were killed. In the military hospitals, veteran doctors recognized the symptoms as being mustard gas. They also noticed the destruction of white blood cells, which directly led to American research of mustard gas-related compounds as a possible treatment for blood cancers. The search for a silver bullet had restarted and effectively continues to this day. A promising new light-based treatment called Photodynamic Therapy, or PDT, is not part of the big three therapies, but it deserves a review. The essence of PDT is the use of light to activate a targeted drug that will kill tumors. Back in Germany, and as early as 1900, a student was working with dyes and noticed that paramecium samples left out in sunlight would be killed. It was the start of PDT and the search for a safe activating drug. There remained the same safety issue with PDT as with chemotherapy drugs. The drug had to be safe for the patient. The same factors limiting the search for the chemotherapy silver bullet limited the search for the PDT photosensitive silver bullet. The active use of a drug and light therapy did not start until 1976, when Dr. Thomas Dougherty conducted the first clinical trials in Buffalo at Roswell Park using the Canadian-produced drug Photofrin. With an IV administration of Photofrin, the tumors absorbed the synthetic drug. Light was targeted, and a resulting photosensitive reaction would kill the tumor. PDT for bladder cancer was first approved as a treatment in Canada in 1993. The U.S. FDA subsequently approved PDT for lung and esophageal cancers. Superficial actinic keratosis and skin cancers are commonly and successfully treated with PDT today. But deep internal cancer treatments using PDT had its issues. It was complex surgery or laparoscopy to get targeted light to the internal tumor. Physicians needed targeted light because they did not want to damage healthy tissue. Early PDT drugs also had the issue of being slow to metabolize out of the body. This frequently resulted in patients being burnt simply by going out into the sun. Dr. George Strobel was an innovative naturopath doctor in Ontario, Canada. In 2008, Dr. Strobel was researching the use of 5-ALA as a photosensitizer for use with PDT. The drug was patented and was being used to treat acne with a blue light to activate the drug. 5-ALA is a natural, non-essential amino acid and is a prodrug to the natural protoporphyrin 9, or PP9. Add iron to PP9, and the body creates heme. Interestingly, PP9 is weakly photosensitive. Dr. Strobel realized that to treat the deeper cancers that he wanted to treat, he needed a more powerful light. This was a challenge because LEDs readily melt with excessive heat. He turned to the Hamilton, Ontario LED light specialist Tom Kerber, who developed the world's most intense red light device, with red being a wavelength of light most suitable for treating internal cancers with 5-ALA and PP9. Kerber founded Illumacell to develop the light technology, and shortly thereafter, Dr. Strobel tragically died. To continue his legacy and develop the treatment further, Illumacell first conducted a mouse study using barriers of pork tissue to simulate human breast tissue. The study conclusively demonstrated the potential of Dr. Strobel's approach using Illumacell technology. Today, Illumacell devices have the power of 20 modern LED streetlights and will not burn patients. Patients have been treated in Mexico and in Canada under Health Canada authorizations. Illumacell PDT provides a safe and effective cancer treatment approach because it uses a safe, inexpensive, and natural photosensitizer drug in 5-ALA combined with a non-invasive light device capable of penetrating 6 to 8 centimeters of skin tissue, vastly deeper than other light devices. This could change how we treat cancer. Illumacell now needs to pass the regulatory and related financial hurdles that early pioneering doctors didn't have to face. In a short time, we should see a fourth fundamental treatment option available for cancer patients.